So this was going to be a little bit different. I wanted to look back over lambing 2024, kind of review it, look at the things that we felt went really good for us, look at some of the things that we feel that there's room for improvement, and just overall discuss our overall experience with lambing this year. So this year we had a really good year for us. Actually, it was our best year yet here on the farm for lambing. We completed the year with about 1.8 lambs per ewe, which is good for us. That's really good. We were shooting for that. The majority of the ewes had twins, only a few had singles. We really are happy that we didn't have any triplets this year. Every year, basically, we've had a set of triplets. It's been a lot of extra work, a lot of work keeping those lambs healthy, and usually we end up losing one of the triplets anyway. So this year we're really happy with the numbers that were produced. And the lambs seem to be very healthy, active, jumping around, really looking for mom to latch onto her. And that's something that we are attributing to our nutrition program that we had kind of set up with our ewes and our mineral system that we had set up. Just making sure that everybody's needs were being met all throughout pre-breeding, breeding, and then gestation period, and the whole time that they were raising the lambs. All our ewes went into this year with a great body condition score. That's one thing we have really worked hard on, and that's with that nutrition, keeping them in a good body condition score. That helps with ease of lambing. Also, the way we kept them in good body condition score this year, we really called hard our flock of sheep over the last 2 years. We called about 20% of our ewes every year over the last 2 years. And we feel like we really had the best of the best, and the ewes that we've added to our flock have brought in some great genetics, great maternal genetics, and they are really good mothers and seem to really enjoy taking care of their lambs and really work at it. And that's really working out well for us because like this year, we only had those 2 lambs that we had to use a bottle on. The 1 lamb we had to use a bottle with because that mother ewe ended up just basically deciding she wasn't going to take care of it. Funny thing is, that ewe was one of the first ewes that we purchased, and this year she was kind of 50-50 on it. She was going to be able to stay just because we had a couple of little issues out of her last year, but basically by her abandoning that 1 lamb and choosing to raise the other, that put her on the list, so she's going to go on our spring call list here. And the other ewe was the one who died in birth with that prolapse, so you know, that lamb, it made it through to weaning time, and we did a lot of work with it. Rachel really worked hard keeping it alive and fed and everything because it knew nothing but her bringing it out bottles of milk. We were really happy to be able to wean that lamb and know that it still is going to produce a good product in the end with all that work we had to put into it. So I want to talk about the equipment that we were using. That lamb stand for tagging and docking their tails worked out great for us this year. I really like having that. Plan on using it a lot more in the future because of our numbers increasing. One thing though I want to change for myself is the ear tag situation that we use. Currently we just write out an ear tag, and you know, we have a scrapey tag for it, and it has that custom ear tag in its ear, the numbers that we wrote, and correlates to a scrapey tag that we apply later to it. Well, what I want to do is, after visiting some other farms this spring, I want to put a 2-tag system in, have 1 tag that correlates to the scrapey tag in the opposite ear. And so we'll tag the lamb with a scrapey tag and a tag that's handwritten, that's a brighter color. So then that way we don't have to worry about losing a tag, figuring out which lamb belongs to which ewe, and overall it'll make them a little bit easier to identify as they're out here in the pen walking around, as we're doing just general checks on them, making sure everybody's surviving. You don't have to try to chase them around to see what the tag number is. We're hoping that brighter tag will stand out a little bit more. After seeing those and those other lambs, I really like that, and I wanted to incorporate that into our system. One thing we're changing though, definitely, is after using that lamb stand this year, we had great success with it. And then I started noticing some of our lambs' tails were a little bit longer than we liked. Got in there and started looking. Some of the bands were even missing off the end of the tails a day or so later after putting them on. So we'd had to reband them. And I started looking at it, and I started talking to people and asking them questions that raise a lot more sheep and have a lot more lambs than we do, and asking them about it. And I have been using these green bands. And what I'm thinking is I grabbed a pack of old green bands that I had that might have been a year or two old and started using those. And they were just weak, the elasticity, or they were brittle. You know, because some of these lambs have perfect tails on them, and other ones, as you know, they moved down just a little bit or broke. So what we ended up doing about 3/4 away through lambing this year, we ended up buying some Premier 1 style bands that are for lamb and goats and started using those. That's what a lot of people that I talk to prefer. They're basically both, each pack's like $1 or $2 anyway. So I think going forward, we're just going to go with those orange bands for sheep and goats and order them all new every year. And at the end of lambing, throw them all away. That way we don't have any chance of getting any mix up like I did this year. And another piece of equipment that really came in very valuable this year with the extreme cold temperatures that we were experiencing was that barrel with a heat lamp in it. Now, in years past, I hated using heat lamps. I don't like using them at all, but this year I really had no choice with the amount of lambs that we were having and the temperatures outside, and at the time of night that these ewes were having their lambs, we ended up using that heat barrel a lot, really. And after using it, I saw how you could put these lambs in right after they're born into this barrel, that you could keep an eye on them. That heat lamp would keep them up to temperature until they were starting to get active enough. And I was putting lambs in there in single digits, and within an hour or so they'd be out looking for mom, trying to latch onto her. And that is something I like seeing. And so what I think I'm going to do going forward is set up 4 or 5 lambing jugs, and I want to have 4 or 5, however many I have, barrels set up in there ready to go at all times. That way every pen has them, even if the lamp's not plugged in. That one bottle lamb really like getting in that barrel just sitting. And you know, I can imagine that cuts down on any kind of draft, gives the lamb a kind of a secure place to lay and nap. And so I can see that it could be very beneficial going forward, just because it's a pretty cheap option. It doesn't really take up much room in the lambing jug, and just with the success that we had off the one we were using this year, I want to make sure that I can continue that and apply that to lambing in the future. And then with our lambing jugs, I ended up only buying one of those Seidel panels, so that way I could clip that head gate into it as needed. So that way if we needed to clamp a ewe and get up on work on her, we could. Well, the problem is I have a bunch of mismatched gates and everything like that, and all of my gates are either wired or clipped together or chained. And what I found is that it would take me 5 or 10 minutes to unwire the doorway, to put that Seidel panel on the front, and then hook the head clamp onto it. Well, what I want to do for next year is order one of those Seidel panels for each one of the lambing jugs. So then that way, all I have to transfer from one jug to the next, if needed, is that head clamp, a headlock setup. So that way, if we're needing to lock a ewe up to get to her or whatever, we can do that. And every pin will basically be the same with those Seidel panels in the front, because there's some other like bucket holders and stuff like that we can use with it. And it'll make our lambing jugs a lot nicer, I feel, and more uniform. And you know, overall, who wants to spend an extra 10 or 15 minutes out here in the barn, especially when, you know, you're trying to help, you know, advance these lambs, or take care of these ewes or treat them for something when it's 4 degrees out and it's 3 o'clock in the morning. And I just feel like this will be something that will really help streamline us in our lambing jugs. So some of the things that we've done that we're going to continue doing in the future is the Premier 1 electrolyte. I like adding that to those used buckets for the whole time that they're in the lambing jug. Really getting them drinking plenty of water, rehydrating after giving birth, filling them back up with vitamins and minerals. I can know why they really like it. It smells kind of sweet, looks a lot like Gatorade, and they just seem to really consume a lot of water when I add that to it in the lambing jug. And you know, I just feel like that's something that's really nice that I can continue doing to offer a higher level of care to them. The lamb and kid paste, that tube that I give the lambs as soon as they're born, that's something I feel like, you know, it adds like $1 or $2 to each lamb, I think it is, in their overall cost. But you know, you're putting some prebiotic, probiotic down in them right there straight from the start, getting their gut working, getting them hungry, wanting to get over to mom. And it's just something else that's just, you know, another tool in our toolbox of trying to make sure these lambs have everything they need to stay strong and survive. One thing I do want to change though, because I personally want to collect more data on our lambs. I'm going to get a digital scale. I'm kind of sick of using that fishing scale. It's kind of hard to read. There's kilograms on one side, pounds on the other, and they're just little dash marks with, I think it's 5 pounds are the main marks. So it's one of those things where I would prefer to just be able to grab a hold of it, hook onto that little sling I got, lift up, see the weight, write it down. And overall, that'll just make things a little bit easier on me at 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm out here in the barn, make things a little bit easier to see and just more convenient overall. One of the worst parts about the whole breeding season and lambing this last year was losing our ram Rusty, who is our original registered Suffolk ram. And then we replaced him with that ram Maverick. And with Maverick passing away abruptly like he did, that's just one of those things that was, you know, very disheartening. But one good thing is that all of our registered Suffolk ewes were covered by Maverick and ended up producing a 50-50 split of ewes and rams. So one thing we're really excited about is being able to look through those rams, watch them grow, watch them develop, and hopefully one of those rams will be able to develop into a new ram for us here to use with our flock of sheep. What I'm really wanting to do though is probably purchase a second registered Suffolk ram, so then that way I have a backup, but also I can kind of split these ewes up a little bit, you know, kind of grow a little bit more internally, close off our flock a little bit more, and you know, it's not too bad to have a spare, so we're not ever in a situation like we were last year. Our ram Sparkles, he's on the call list just because we had those 2 sets of lambs this year where they had that inverted eyelid. And that's about $125 every time the vet has to come and staple their eyelids closed, and then you have to, you know, pop them things out once it's healed a little bit. So, you know, it's one of those things where he's on the cutting block. We wanted to look for a fresh, really nice crossbred, weather-producing ram. So we're going to keep our eyes out for that. I don't know if we'll buy a ram lamb or pick one up as a yearling, or, you know, one that's a couple years old somebody's selling, moving on from. So it's just one of those things we'll have to see what comes of it this spring. Another thing I want to do is buy some more registered Suffolk ewes to add to our flock to kind of expand that part of it. And I also want to buy some more of these crossbred weather type ewes. What I want to do is kind of get a combination of getting some lambs, some ewe lambs, and getting some yearling ewes or some aged ewes, just depending on what kind of groups we can put together with some of these producers that we work with. Because me and Rachel have talked, and with our demand that we have going into the future for lamb, and just having lambs available, we're going to need to increase our flock size by almost double over the next 12 months. So that's something that we're really going to need to start working into this spring and summer, is putting together some really good quality sets of Suffolk ewes and these crossbred weather type ewes. So that's something I'm really looking forward to, is getting out there, looking at some of these different livestock at different producers, talking to them and seeing what kind of genetics we can bring back here to our flock to really help us expand and push on to the next level. But you know, that's just something I'm looking forward to and already kind of making plans for. But overall this year, we were really happy with 2024 lambing. It was a lot of work on me and Rachel. Rachel did a lot of the bottle feeding, and that's a lot of hard work. But you know, in the end, we were lucky it was only those 2, and it seemed everything worked out for the best for us. Well, that'll wrap this one up. Thanks for watching.